They laughed at her thrift store dress, mocked her when she asked for water, called her coach girl like it was a cursed to them. She was just another nobody from economy class, someone to ridicule and ignore. Until a man stepped out from the luxury suite, looked them all in the eye, and said four words that turned the ship silent: "She's with me." That was the moment everything changed. The Azure Horizon was the kind of cruise ship that only existed in dreams or glossy brochures. It shimmered under the Caribbean sun, a floating palace of luxury, glamour, and wealth. On the top decks, champagne flowed endlessly, violinists played to silk-clad guests, and the suites had private balconies bigger than most apartments. But far below that world, tucked away in the economy section near the engine hum, sat Ava Monroe. She didn't belong, at least not in the way everyone else seemed to think. Wearing a plain white summer dress she'd found in a thrift store the night before, her suitcase scuffed and secondhand, Ava clutched her boarding pass like it might disintegrate at any moment. It had taken every penny she had, and a miracle of a last-minute discounted ticket, to be here. She wasn't here to be seen. She was here to disappear. 3 days earlier, she had quit her job. Her engagement had ended. Her so-called best friend had betrayed her in a way Ava didn't yet have the strength to say out loud. The cruise had felt like an escape, one desperate breath of air before she had to face the real world again. But even here, the world wouldn't let her forget her place. IT started to check in. The woman behind her, draped in designer sunglasses and trailing a suitcase that probably cost more than Ava's apartment, let out a sigh loud enough to echo. "Can we move already? Some of us are booked in suites, not steerage." Her friend snickered. She probably thinks economy gets access to the sky deck. Ava didn't respond. She never did. Years of being overlooked had taught her that silence was safer. She stepped forward, handed her ID to the check-in agent, and tried to ignore the burning behind her eyes. Once on board, the divide was even sharper. The economy cabins were cramped, windowless cubes with twin bunks and industrial carpet. The walls were thin enough to hear every argument, every flush. Ava set her things down gently, as if afraid the room might break beneath her touch, and went up to the main deck just to breathe. There, it was like stepping into a movie. White linen curtains billowed from cabanas. A glass pool sparkled with reflections of the sun. Waiters in polished uniforms passed trays of flutes and exotic hors d'oeuvres. Couples posed for selfies, their arms glittering with diamonds and gold watches. And then there were them. The two girls from check-in, Bella and Jade, had somehow made it their mission to track Ava's presence like bloodhounds. They lounged on sunbeds like queens of a kingdom they thought they owned. "Hey," Bella called out, gesturing to Ava's flip-flops. Did they run out of real shoes in the discount bin? Laughter erupted. Jade added, "I didn't know they let the help hang out on this deck." A few others nearby chuckled, their heads turning. Ava felt her face heat up. She turned, stepping away quietly, but not before she heard someone mutter, "Economy girls should stay where they belong." By dinner, the whispers followed her. She sat alone at a far table in the main dining area. The host had hesitated before seating her, asking twice if she was sure she belonged there. The menu had no prices, which meant everything was too expensive to ask. She quietly requested water and the cheapest dish she could pronounce from across the room. Bella raised her wine glass. To charity cases she toasted, loud enough for half the room to hear. Ava didn't even flinch this time. What none of them knew was that Ava wasn't as alone as she looked. She hadn't seen him yet. Not really. Just a glimpse at check-in. A tall man in a tailor navy suit, sunglasses reflecting the sea, speaking to the concierge in a low, calm voice that made people listen that he'd been on the VIP deck. She remembered his name because she overheard it. Dominic Vale. The whispers around him were different. He was quiet power, quiet wealth. Rumors swirled even among the elite. Tech CEO, billionaire recluse, owner of the ship. He hadn't looked at Ava. Not once. Or so she thought. The next morning, she woke early to explore the ship while the others slept. She liked the silence before the day's ridicule started. She liked pretending the decks were hers. Just for a moment, that as she walked past the spa, she bumped into someone. Sorry, she started, stepping back at it was him. Dominic Vale. She froze. He didn't. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, took her in with a glance that felt curious. He looked at her dress, her sandals, her chipped nail polish. Then he smiled, not a smirk, not pity, just gentle. Morning, he said that Ava's voice caught. That was it. He walked on, disappearing like a ghost into the spa. But from that moment, everything began to shift. The whispers stopped, not because they were done, but because something else had caught their attention. That afternoon, Dominic was seen near the economy deck, talking to a crew member, asking questions. The next day, Ava came to the main deck and found a seat already reserved for her. Next to it sat a glass of imported lemonade and a note. Sometimes, it's not where you are on the ship. It's who notices you on it. No signature. But she knew. Everyone did. Bella and Jade gaped from their cabana, stunned, speechless. Ava didn't smile. She simply sipped her drink and leaned back into the sun. The whispers didn't stop. They only changed direction. Where once they'd mocked Ava Monroe for her shoes and her silence, now they stared for another reason altogether. Tea started small, a glass of lemonade placed beside her seat on the sun deck. Next, she began receiving small favors from staff, towel service, a private lounger, even an extra dessert at dinner. She never asked. She didn't even smile. But somehow things around her shifted. Every time she looked up, she caught someone watching her. Not with pity this time, but confusion, curiosity, jealousy. It didn't take long before someone confronted her. Bella approached one afternoon, her heels clicking across the deck like war drums. "Who are you?" she asked flatly, arms crossed over her designer bikini top. Ava looked up from her book. "Excuse me, you know exactly what I mean. The staff treats you like a VIP, and I know you're not one. So what? Did you flirt with someone important? Is that it?" Ava said nothing. That was her power now. Silence. Because while Bella was spitting venom, he was watching from the highest deck under a shaded cabana. Dominic Vale sat with his signature drink and unreadable expression. He looked at Bella, then at Ava, then turned away, not bothering to involve himself. Not yet. That only made the mystery deeper. It wasn't until the captain's gala that everything broke wide open. The gala was the ship's grandest night, a formal dinner and dance under the stars, where the wealthy showed off gowns, suits, and designer everything. Ava hadn't planned to attend. She didn't have a dress, let alone heels. But at 4 p.m., she returned to her cabin and found a black velvet box on her bed. Inside, a gown, dark blue, elegant, perfect, folded beneath it, a note. No one should miss a night like this. She hesitated for a long time. Part of her wanted to reject it, walk away, stay small and hidden. But something inside her was changing. She didn't want to hide anymore. When Ava walked into the ballroom, the entire room turned. The gown hugged her shape, understated and elegant. Her hair was tied back simply, her makeup soft. She looked nothing like the girl who had arrived with a chipped suitcase and worn sandals. She didn't need diamonds. She didn't need to speak. She just needed to exist. And that was enough. Bella nearly choked on her champagne. Jade whispered, "Oh my God, is that her?" Ava took a glass of wine and made her way to the edge of the room. She was about to retreat when the crowd began to shift. People stepped aside, and then he walked in. Dominic Vale, tailored tux, polished shoes, quiet thunder. He didn't look at anyone else. His eyes found Ava, and for the first time since the cruise began, he smiled. Full, warm, and deliberate, he walked to her slowly. Stopped just a few inches away. "May I?" he asked, offering his hand. She nodded, still silent. And just like that, the two of them moved to the center of the ballroom and danced. The crowd was stunned. Whispers rose like a wave. Who is she? Are they together? Since when? Why her? Bella's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Dominic leaned in, close enough that only Ava could hear. "I believe we've given them something to talk about." She laughed. It was small, barely audible, but it was real that a new kind of fire sparked in her chest. Not from revenge, not from attention, but from being seen. For once, truly seen. After the gala, things moved quickly. The next morning, Ava was invited to breakfast in the exclusive Sky Lounge, something reserved for suite holders and VIPs only. The hostess nearly fainted when Dominic arrived moments later and sat beside her without a word of explanation. WY lunch. Someone had posted about them on the cruise's guest-only social board. Mystery girl spotted again with Dominic Vale. She was in economy. He's a billionaire. What's going on? Rumors exploded. Some said she was his secret fiancée. Others claimed she was a plant, hired to keep him company. One version said she had saved his life once, and this was his way of repaying her. Ava said nothing, and neither did Dominic. On the third day, the confrontation finally happened. Bella cornered Ava near the observation deck, eyes blazing. "This is a game to you, isn't it?" she spat. "You think just because some rich guy looks at you that you're one of us now?" Ava met her gaze calmly. "I don't think I'm one of you." "Oh, please. You're nothing but a nobody with a free dress and a borrowed seat at the table." Then a new voice joined them, firm, calm, cold. "She doesn't need to borrow anything." Dominic stepped into view, arms crossed. He looked at Bella like one might look at something unpleasant stuck to a shoe. "If I ever hear you speak to her like that again, you'll be removed from the ship." "Understood." Bella paled. "You can't." "I can, and I will." Then, turning to Ava, his expression softened. "Come with me." Ava hesitated for just a moment, then walked with him, past Bella, past everyone, and no longer invisible, and no longer alone. Back on the VIP deck, Ava finally asked the question that had been burning inside her since the first day. "Why me?" Dominic looked out at the ocean for a long time. Then finally, he spoke. "I saw you at check-in. The way you kept your head down. The way they treated you. You reminded me of someone I once knew." He looked at her then. "My mother." Ava blinked. "She raised me alone. Worked 3 jobs. People treated her like dirt until the day she died. And when I built my company, I promised myself I'd never forget her. Or the people like her." A pause. "You didn't try to impress anyone. You didn't fake anything. You were just real." Ava's throat tightened. "Besides," he added with a slight grin, "you're the only person on this ship who hasn't asked me what I do, what I earn, or what I own." She smiled. "That's because I don't care." Exactly. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting an amber glow over the ship as it sailed through the Caribbean night. The gentle lapping of the waves against the hull was a soft, constant reminder of how far Ava Monroe had come. From the quiet, forgotten girl in economy class to someone who couldn't be ignored. And yet, as she stood at the edge of the VIP deck, looking out at the vast ocean, she felt a strange sense of peace. Dominic Vale had been right. She wasn't like them, not the wealthy, the privileged, the people who assumed they had a right to everything. She was someone who had lived in the shadows, and for the first time, she had been seen for who she truly was, But what happened next was more than she had ever anticipated. It started with a whisper, the kind that always follows a scandal. The next morning, Ava was once again invited to breakfast in the Sky Lounge, but this time it wasn't just her usual seat that had changed. As she entered, the room fell silent. Every eye was on her. Whispers erupted in hushed tones. And then she saw it. A large, gleaming screen in the corner of the room flashed a photo of her. Ava Monroe, mystery girl who's got the billionaire's attention. The headline came from the cruise's own social board, where rumors about her and Dominic had circulated like wildfire. But today, it was no longer just a whisper among the staff. It was public, and it was about to become even bigger. Ava froze for a moment. She didn't want this. She had never asked for the spotlight. All she wanted was to escape, to find some semblance of peace. But in that moment, Dominic Vale appeared beside her, as calm and composed as ever. "It's time," he said simply. She looked at him, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "You've been hiding long enough," he added, his gaze steady. "You don't need to hide anymore." Later that day, the captain's gala took on a new energy. This wasn't just another night of glitzy gowns and perfect smiles. This was the moment when the truth would be unveiled. The moment when everyone would finally understand what had been happening between Ava and Dominic. As the evening wore on, Ava stood with Dominic by the grand staircase, watching the crowd flow around them. Bella and Jade had been conspicuously absent, but the murmur of their voices was still there, whispering through the air like a background hum. Then, as expected, the moment came. Ava stepped forward. The camera flashes came like a storm, and the crowd fell silent as she moved to the center of the ballroom. Dominic's hand found hers, his grip firm but gentle. Then, with the eyes of the room on them, he spoke. "It's time you all knew the truth," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the crowd. "Ava Monroe is not just some mystery girl. She is someone who deserves more than this, more than what you've all been giving her, more than your whispers and judgment." Ava's heart raced. She hadn't expected this. Dominic turned to her, his expression softening. "You see, Ava isn't just anyone. She's the daughter of my mentor, the one person who taught me everything I know. She's been under the radar, hiding from a world that has never seen her worth." Ava's breath caught in her throat. The daughter of his mentor? Dominic's voice dropped, quieter but more intense. "Her mother was a brilliant woman, a trailblazer in tech, who taught me what it meant to truly succeed. She raised Ava alone after her husband abandoned them, and she did it without any of the privilege you all take for granted. Ava could have been born into this world, into this wealth, but she chose a different path, and I respect that." Ava's mind spun. She hadn't known he would reveal this. It had always been her mother's story, her mother's legacy, but now the truth was out. The truth about her, about the girl who didn't fit in, who had spent years hiding from the spotlight. The room buzzed with disbelief. The whispers that had once been cruel and dismissive became tinged with awe. The people who had once looked down on Ava now realized who she truly was. Not just some nobody in economy class, not some charity case or mistake. She was someone whose very existence had been overlooked until now. But for Ava, it wasn't the realization of her heritage that mattered. It was something else in that moment. She understood what she had gained, not through wealth or status, but through the quiet, unyielding strength she'd carried within herself all along. As the gala continued, Ava found herself back at the edge of the ballroom, her back against the cool marble wall. The crowd had shifted, their attention no longer on her. She was, for the first time in days, left in peace. Dominic had disappeared into the crowd, and for a brief moment, Ava let herself breathe, letting the weight of everything settle. Then, A familiar voice broke through the noise. "You always were someone," Bella's voice hissed from behind her. "I didn't know who you really were, but I guess it doesn't matter now, does it?" Ava turned slowly, meeting Bella's cold, narrowed eyes. "No," she replied softly, "it doesn't." She had everything she needed now. The truth, her peace, and the strength to leave everything behind. As Bella turned and walked away, Ava knew the one thing she hadn't fully realized until now. She had been right all along. The people who mocked her in economy class, they were just a fleeting part of her story. The rest of her journey, that was still unfolding. As the night drew to a close, Ava found Dominic standing by the ship's railing, staring out at the endless sea. She joined him quietly, her footsteps soft on the deck. He turned when he heard her approach, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You did it," he said, his voice low. "I didn't do anything," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "I just let people see me." Dominic studied her for a moment, his gaze filled with something deeper than admiration. "You've always been seen," he murmured. The rest of the world just had to catch up. And there, under the stars and the quiet hum of the ship, Ava realized something profound. The world might have spent years ignoring her, but that didn't mean she was invisible. Not anymore. As the ship sails into the night, Ava Monroe steps into a new chapter of her life. No longer hidden in the shadows, she's embraced who she truly is. Someone with a story, a legacy, and a future no one can deny. And as for the ones who mocked her, well, they'll never forget the woman they underestimated. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that go unheard until they finally rise to be seen. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales from Tales on Ship.